Padre Pio, a revered saint of the Catholic Church, is often remembered for his extraordinary gifts, including the stigmata, the ability to read souls, and the profound spiritual wisdom he imparted to those who sought his guidance. However, beyond his visible signs of holiness and the miracles attributed to him, Padre Pio's life was also marked by a deep, haunting experience, a vision that would forever change his understanding of divine mercy and judgment. It was a vision unlike any other, one that shocked Padre Pio to the core. He had seen something that truly terrified him, something that rattled his faith in a way nothing had before. In this vision, he witnessed the rejection of a soul that, by all outward measures, was good. The soul was not one of grave sin or wickedness, yet it was turned away at the gates of heaven. This soul, despite living a life that many would consider virtuous, was denied eternal peace. This was a soul that seemed to have everything right, but still, something was missing. The experience shook Padre Pio profoundly, leaving him to question the true nature of salvation and the way souls are judged by God. How could this be? How could someone who lived a morally good life, who followed the teachings of the Church, still be rejected by heaven? It was a question that haunted him, and one that he would spend the rest of his life contemplating and trying to understand. The vision was not merely a dream or a passing moment. It was an experience that, as Padre Pio later recounted, served as a powerful lesson in the need for total surrender to God's will. The soul in question, while good, had failed to fully surrender itself to God. It had lived a life of self-righteousness, of relying on its own works and goodness, rather than placing complete trust in God's grace. It had failed to recognize that salvation is not about being good in our own eyes, but about being completely surrendered to God's will and His mercy. The rejection of this soul was not a rejection of its goodness, but a rejection of its pride and self-sufficiency. The soul had clung to its own virtues and works, instead of placing complete trust in God's mercy and grace. It had failed to recognize that no matter how good a person is, without God's grace, no one can enter heaven. Padre Pio realized that no one, no matter how righteous they appear to be, can earn their way to heaven on their own. It is only through the grace of God and a complete surrender to His will that salvation can be attained. This vision deeply impacted Padre Pio's understanding of the nature of salvation and the role of God's grace. He began to emphasize the importance of humility and surrender in his teachings, reminding his followers that it is not enough to simply live a good life by human standards. We must be willing to surrender our will to God's, trusting completely in His mercy. The vision also reminded him of the deep mystery of divine judgment and how, ultimately, only God knows the true state of a soul. The teachings of Padre Pio, especially in the light of this vision, invite us to reflect on our own spiritual lives. Are we living our lives relying on our own works and merits? Do we place our trust in our own goodness, or do we recognize that it is only by God's grace that we are saved? Padre Pio's experience challenges us to look beyond our outward appearances and to examine our hearts. Are we truly surrendered to God's will, or are we holding on to our own sense of righteousness? Padre Pio's vision of the rejected soul was a stark reminder that salvation is not a matter of mere human goodness. It is about a deep, intimate relationship with God, where we recognize our need for His grace and mercy. It is about surrendering our will to His and trusting that He alone is the source of our salvation. As Padre Pio often said, pray, hope, and don't worry. In other words, place your trust in God's grace and allow Him to guide you on the path to eternal life. In his own life, Padre Pio demonstrated this total surrender to God. He lived each day in humility, trusting in God's will for him, even when it was difficult. He faced immense trials, including physical suffering and spiritual warfare, but through it all, he never wavered in his trust in God. He understood that true holiness is not about avoiding sin or following a set of rules. It is about living in complete surrender to God, trusting in His mercy, and allowing His grace to transform our hearts. Padre Pio's vision of the rejected soul also serves as a call to action for all of us. It reminds us that we must never take our salvation for granted. It is easy to become complacent in our faith, to assume that because we are good people, we are guaranteed a place in heaven. But Padre Pio's vision challenges us to go deeper. It calls us to examine our hearts, to ask ourselves if we are truly living in complete surrender to God's will, or if we are relying on our own works and virtues to justify us before God. It is also a reminder that God's judgment is not always as we expect it to be. We may think that our good deeds will earn us favor with God, but God looks beyond our outward actions. He sees the heart, and it is the state of our hearts that determines our eternal destiny. Are we living for God, or are we living for ourselves? Are we fully surrendered to His will, or are we clinging to our own desires and ambitions? These are the questions that we must ask ourselves, just as Padre Pio did in the wake of his terrifying vision. In conclusion, Padre Pio's vision of the rejected soul serves as a powerful reminder of the mystery of divine judgment and the importance of surrendering our will to God. It challenges us to reflect on our own lives, to examine our hearts, and to ask ourselves if we are truly living in complete dependence on God's grace. Padre Pio's life and teachings show us that true holiness is not about our own righteousness or goodness, but about surrendering ourselves to God and allowing His grace to transform us. If you've been moved by Padre Pio's powerful vision and his message of surrender to God's will, leave a comment below and share your thoughts. How does this story resonate with you? Are there areas of your life where you need to surrender more fully to God? Don't forget to like and subscribe for more spiritual reflections and insights into the life and teachings of Padre Pio. Padre Pio, in his deep contemplation, began to understand that salvation is not a transactional exchange. It's not about what we do to earn heaven. It is about our relationship with God, and this relationship is built upon trust, humility, and surrender. This is the heart of the lesson Padre Pio learned from the soul that was rejected, despite its apparent goodness. It wasn't the soul's actions that led to its rejection, but its failure to acknowledge that all of its actions were only possible through God's grace. When we live with the understanding that everything we have and everything we do is a gift from God, we begin to develop the proper attitude towards life. The soul in Padre Pio's vision may have been good by worldly standards, but it had not fully internalized the idea that all goodness comes from God. It had not fully surrendered to the will of God, nor had it humbly accepted that even its best deeds were only possible because of God's mercy. In a way, this story mirrors the parable of the Pharisee and the tax collector. The Pharisee, in his righteousness, boasted of his good deeds and righteousness, while the tax collector, with humility, acknowledged his need for God's mercy. It is this humility that Padre Pio understood as the key to salvation. Without it, we risk falling into the same trap as the soul he witnessed, believing that our actions alone can justify us before God. Padre Pio's message becomes ever more clear. It is not enough to simply follow the rules or to perform good deeds. These are necessary, but they must be coupled with a deep, internal surrender to God's will. True holiness comes from recognizing that we cannot do anything without God. Without Him, we are nothing. It's a recognition of our dependence on His mercy and grace, which is the only path that leads to salvation. Now, let us reflect on how this message can shape our daily lives. How many of us go through life ticking off the boxes of good deeds, thinking that our actions alone will ensure us a place in heaven? We may attend Mass, volunteer, give to charity, or live according to moral guidelines. But if we do these things with an attitude of self-reliance, without full surrender to God's will, are we truly living as Christ taught? Padre Pio's vision encourages us to question our motivations. Are we seeking to please God, or are we seeking to be seen as good by others? Are we placing our trust in our own works, or are we relying on God's grace? It is a challenging question, but one that we must ask ourselves. This message is not just for those who are living in sin or struggling in their faith. It is for all of us, because none of us are beyond the need for God's grace. We may be good by the world's standards, but that is not enough. The path to eternal life requires total surrender of our pride, our self-sufficiency, and our desire for control. It requires a willingness to let go of everything and trust God completely, even when we cannot see the way forward. This lesson was not just for Padre Pio, it's for each and every one of us. We are all called to live lives of humility and trust in God's mercy. We are all invited to examine the deeper layers of our hearts, to see if we are truly living in full surrender to God, or if we are relying on our own strength and righteousness. If we are honest with ourselves, we may find areas where we need to let go and allow God to guide us more fully. For Padre Pio, the soul's rejection in his vision was not an isolated event. It was a warning, a reminder of how fragile our relationship with God can be. We can never take our salvation for granted. We must continually strive to humble ourselves before God, recognizing that without Him, we can do nothing. We must surrender to His will, not just in the big moments of our lives, but in the daily decisions we make, in the way we treat others, and in how we choose to live each day. In reflecting on this vision, we also recognize the immense mercy of God. For all of us, no matter where we are on our journey, God's mercy is always available. Padre Pio often spoke of the importance of prayer and the sacraments in helping us remain close to God and open to His grace. He encouraged his followers to pray constantly, to seek the sacrament of reconciliation, and to remain humble in their efforts to live good lives. Through these means, we open our hearts to God's mercy, allowing Him to shape us into the people He created us to be. Padre Pio's vision is a powerful reminder of the need for continual vigilance in our spiritual lives. We are always called to ask ourselves if we are truly surrendering ourselves to God's will, if we are living lives of deep trust and humility, or if we are relying on our own strength and righteousness. It's easy to become complacent in our faith, to assume that because we do good things, we are assured of salvation. But the truth is, salvation is not guaranteed by our works alone. It is only through God's grace and our total surrender to His will that we can find our way to eternal life. As we conclude this reflection, let us take a moment to consider our own spiritual lives. Are we living in full surrender to God? Are we trusting in His grace, or are we relying on our own goodness? Take time to reflect on these questions and ask God for the grace to live with humility and complete dependence on Him. As we delve deeper into Padre Pio's vision of the soul's rejection, we come to understand that salvation is not a simple matter of performing good deeds or leading a morally upright life. While these are important, they alone cannot guarantee entry into heaven. The crucial factor in our spiritual journey is our relationship with God. Padre Pio's vision serves as a stark reminder that a soul can be outwardly good, but still lack the inner transformation and surrender necessary for salvation. This brings us to an important spiritual truth. Salvation is not a one-time event or something we can take for granted. It is a continuous process of growth, transformation, and surrender. Every day, we are faced with choices that shape our relationship with God. Just as Padre Pio's vision revealed that even the good soul was rejected due to its lack of complete surrender, we too must examine whether we are living each day with a heart fully open to God's will. A key part of this ongoing transformation is humility. Padre Pio often spoke about the importance of humility in the Christian life. Humility, he believed, is the foundation of all virtues. Without humility, all of our good deeds, no matter how many or how impressive, are hollow. Humility is the key that opens the door to grace. Without it, we may be living in spiritual blindness, relying on our own efforts, rather than allowing God to guide and shape us. Humility, as Padre Pio understood, involves recognizing that we are nothing without God. It means acknowledging that every good thing we do comes not from our own strength, but from God's grace. We are called to live as servants of God, to place our lives entirely in His hands, and to trust that He will guide us according to His perfect will. Another vital aspect of our spiritual journey, as revealed in Padre Pio's vision, is the need for a deep, intimate relationship with God. It is not enough to go through the motions of religious observance or to perform good deeds in the hope of earning favor with God. Our relationship with God must be personal and heartfelt. This is why Padre Pio often emphasized the importance of prayer, especially the Mass and the sacrament of confession. Through these sacraments, we are united with God and are given the grace to live lives of holiness. For Padre Pio, prayer was not just an activity to check off a list. It was a way of life. Prayer, for him, was the means by which he maintained a constant connection with God. It was through prayer that he was able to discern God's will, receive strength in times of suffering, and offer his own life as a sacrifice for the salvation of others. His deep commitment to prayer was rooted in his understanding that only through constant communion with God could he stay on the path of holiness and help others do the same. We too are called to make prayer a central part of our daily lives. Prayer is not just for moments of crisis or times of need. It is the foundation of our relationship with God. Through prayer, we open our hearts to God, allowing Him to speak to us and guide us. Prayer is the means by which we surrender our will to God and ask for the grace to live according to His plan. Padre Pio's life and his terrifying vision of the rejected soul also remind us of the importance of spiritual vigilance. We can easily become complacent in our spiritual lives, thinking that because we are doing good things, we are safe. But Padre Pio's vision challenges us to ask ourselves deeper questions. Are we living in complete surrender to God's will? Are we relying on His grace, or are we trusting in our own goodness? Are we truly seeking to grow closer to God, or are we simply going through the motions? The rejection of the good soul in Padre Pio's vision was not a condemnation of good works, but a warning that salvation is more than just living a moral life. It is about living a life fully surrendered to God, one where our actions are not motivated by self-righteousness, but by a desire to please God and live according to His will. It is about allowing God's grace to transform us from within, rather than relying on our own strength and efforts. As we reflect on Padre Pio's vision, we are called to examine our own lives. Are we truly living for God, or are we living for ourselves? Are we surrendering our will to His, or are we still clinging to our own desires and plans? Are we humble enough to recognize that without God, we are nothing? These are difficult questions, but they are essential to our spiritual growth. It is easy to become comfortable in our faith, to think that because we are good people, we are assured of salvation. But the truth is, salvation is a gift, not something we can earn. It is only through God's grace and our total surrender to His will that we can be saved. Padre Pio's vision serves as a powerful reminder that we must continually seek God, humbly acknowledge our need for His mercy, and trust in His grace to guide us. In Padre Pio's life, we see the example of someone who lived every moment in complete surrender to God. He knew that his good works, his prayers, and his sacrifices were not enough on their own. He relied completely on God's grace to sustain him, and it was through this constant reliance on God that he was able to achieve holiness and help countless others do the same. As we reach the conclusion of this reflection on Padre Pio's haunting vision, it becomes clear that the core message is one of radical humility, total surrender, and an intimate relationship with God. Padre Pio's terrifying vision of the soul's rejection reminds us that salvation is not merely about being good by worldly standards. It is not about our works alone, but about the depth of our relationship with God and our willingness to surrender fully to His will. This vision calls us to reflect deeply on the condition of our own hearts. Are we living lives rooted in pride, self-sufficiency, or mere good deeds? Or are we humbling ourselves before God, acknowledging that we need His grace to truly live a life worthy of His calling? It challenges us to recognize that true holiness is found in complete dependence on God, in trusting Him fully, in surrendering our will, and in seeking His guidance every day. Padre Pio's life, steeped in humility and a deep connection to God, serves as the ultimate example for all of us. He knew that everything he did, every sacrifice, every prayer, was made possible only by God's grace. His teachings and his life call us to live with the same humility, trust, and surrender. It is through this surrender that we allow God to work in and through us, leading us to a life that is not only morally good, but spiritually transformed. As we conclude, let us ask ourselves if we are truly living in full surrender to God's will. Are we relying on His grace, or are we holding on to our own strength? Are we seeking a deep, personal relationship with God, or are we merely going through the motions? Let us take a moment to reflect on these questions, allowing God to open our hearts to the truth of His love and mercy. If Padre Pio's message resonates with you, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. How has this reflection impacted your understanding of salvation and grace? Are there areas in your life where you need to surrender more fully to God? We would love to hear from you and continue this conversation of faith. Thank you for taking the time to reflect on the powerful lessons from Padre Pio's vision. May we all strive to live lives that are fully surrendered to God's will, trusting in His grace to lead us to eternal life. Remember, As Padre Pio often said, pray, hope, and don't worry. May that be a guiding mantra for us all as we seek to live humbly, trusting in God's mercy. God bless you, and may His grace continue to guide you on your spiritual journey.